Happy Monday, everybody. My name's Larry Jacobs. It's the 23rd of September already. Boy, it's going fast. 2024. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today, or perhaps you're listening on the archives. That's okay, too. Everybody does, for goodness sakes. It is a podcast. You can listen whenever you want. Okay, welcome to Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio. We're going to have a pretty good show for you today. I got Paul Glastris here. Paul's the editor-in-chief of a wonderful magazine called The Washington Monthly. Probably most of you know about it, WashingtonMonthly.com. Okay, and it's just absolutely incredible. Okay, for political news, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not going to talk too much about that today. We're going to be talking about how they compile and do their college rankings for their college guide, which, in my humble opinion, as your host, okay, is a far better way to do it than some of the other college guides that you see. So we're going to let Paul explain it all, and I have a feeling he'll agree with me that his is better. Okay, I hope he thinks that. Okay, because he is the editor-in-chief. We're going to archive the show over at ace-ed.org, and I hope you go over there to our Consortium for Equity in Education and see what we're doing over there. We try to do the best we can in all of this, and these podcasts are all over there at ace-ed.org, so please check it out. And I'm going to say good morning now as I bring him on to the editor-in-chief of the Washington Monthly, Paul Glastris. Hi, Paul. It's Larry here.
Hello, Larry. I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure indeed, Sarah. By the way, what you left out, I did do some research. You were Bill Clinton's chief speechwriter, which I'm very impressed with. That's terrific.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was a great honor and one of the most exciting things I've ever done.
I can't imagine anything more exciting than working day by day with any president of the United States. And I liked Clinton, so it was a good one, my friend. I really did, and it's just a fantastic thing. And I want you to talk about the Washington Monthly. Before we get into the college guide, I want you to explain how this magazine positions itself, because as I've been reading it, and I wasn't that familiar with it till we started to set up this interview, okay? It's really fascinating. It's really got great reporting, at least from my point of view, okay? So, and then I started reading your college guide, which I absolutely loved. Okay, and so I want you to just talk about the magazine's positioning, where you are, et cetera, before we get into the actual college guide. Go ahead, Paul. Brag. Oh, mighty editor-in-chief. Brag.
The magazine's been around since 1969. I've been the editor of it since 2001. If you know magazines like The Atlantic or The New Republic or, The American Prospect or Mother Jones, we're kind of in that category.
Yeah.
I think what makes us different is we are really focused on policy reporting and big ideas to solve the nation's problems. We're a magazine of politics. We're on the left, not the right. But,
yes, you are.
Our ideas, I think, appeal to people across the ideological spectrum. We're not doctrinaire, progressive or conservative or anything else. And we do a lot of reporting on big policy ideas. And one of them is how to reform higher education to make
I know, we're going to talk about it.
That's really been at the heart of why we do the college rankings every year.
Well, you do, actually, let's just say that you do more than the college rankings. You actually devote a good part of the any given issue, or at least a continuing part, a column, to higher education. And I'm curious why, and you guys are political in nature, if I may, okay? You're political, yet you see this as part of the whole picture. What got you going into the higher education realm? Something must have happened. Did your kid flunk out at somewhere, or somebody's kid flunk out? What happened? Right.
I used to work at U.S. News and World Report. I worked there for a decade. And I came out of that thinking that there was something maybe a little wrong with the college rankings that they do. And we did some investigative reporting once I was at the Washington Monthly. And sure enough, we came to the conclusion that their methodology really makes no sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Other than to sort of reinforce the conventional wisdom that the best colleges are those that are the most wealthy, prestigious and exclusive, right? The idea that U.S. News perpetuates is that, the highest aspiration of any college should be to be kind of like a country club with lectures instead of golf, right? And we get all the best people, and we in these lovely buildings, and aren't we special? And I went to a selective college, and they're fine. They have their place, but selective colleges educate about 5% of the country.
Exactly.
That goes to college, right?
Thank you.
And so we decided to create a college ranking that doesn't even factor in SAT scores. We don't care about that. We factor in, instead of wealth, prestige, and exclusivity, how much money you spend, how famous you are, and how many people you don't let in. That's the traditional way of deciding what the best colleges are. Yeah. And by the way, the editors at U.S. News who devised that ranking went to those colleges, right? They went to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton.
What a coincidence! What a coincidence!
It was obvious to them that they were the best colleges, and so they crafted a ranking that supported that idea. And there's a lot of money to be made in that. But we created 3 different buckets. Instead of wealth, prestige, and exclusivity, we looked at upward mobility, research, and service to country.
I noticed that, service to country.
And so the idea is, not just so much what are colleges, what do we want out of colleges that we ourselves go to or our kids go to, but what do we want, not so much just what we want out of colleges for our tuition dollars, but what do we want for them out of our tax dollars? Mm-hmm. What do we want as citizens? Because we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars rather, every year on higher education. What do we want out of the system? And so we said we want 3 things. We want, number one, colleges to be engines of upward mobility for folks who weren't born to wealth, to be able to get a degree that is reasonably priced, doesn't overwhelm them with debt, and leads to a career that is a middle class or better career. So upward mobility is number one.
I have to tell you something. You'll get my age in a minute, but I went to Westchester State before it was Westchester State University. That's right outside of Philadelphia. It was one of 14 state colleges in Pennsylvania that originally were state teachers' colleges. Mm-hmm. And before that, were called normal schools because they literally were teacher training institutes. So you had 14 colleges. You've heard of them all: Bloomsburg, Slippery Rock, Edinburgh, Westchester. You can go right down the list, East Stroudsburg, et cetera, et cetera. But what they did, and it's kind of what you just said, what they did, my tuition was, it was a 2 semester a year, and the tuition, I hope you're ready, and this is going to show my age, was $125 a semester.
Holy mackerel.
I know. These were state-supported schools, and they were providing teachers to every school district in Pennsylvania. That's what they were doing. Then they became universities. It's a much bigger school now, but it's still a good school, But my point is, it's exactly what you were saying. They were creating what they needed at a reasonable price, obviously a reasonable price, I remember my father went nuts when they raised tuition to $130 a year, How could they do that? $5 extra bucks. But my point is, you rank colleges. Mine doesn't exist anymore in that form. But you rank colleges in how they do something for the kids and for the country, and I'm so impressed with that. I mean, it's just I think you're doing a great job, and I'm sorry to bring up an old memory, but that's where it is. That's what we need.
Look, the college you went to today, the
Westchester.
$3 word for that kind of a college is a regional public university.
There you go.
And these are colleges that tend to not be well known outside of their states or regions. Yeah. They tend to educate students who are within a 100, 200-mile radius of the college. They tend to be reasonably priced. They do, on balance, we have a story in the Washington Monthly that says they are the best return on investment for state taxpayer dollars of any type of college.
Yep.
And you know, when you put the lens that we put on college rankings, right? Upward mobility, research, the other second bucket, you know, our states, our colleges producing the scholars and scholarship that drive economic growth and human flourishing. And then third, service to country, are the students being encouraged to be engaged citizens by voting, by serving in the military or the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, things like that. And when you put that lens on it, you get a very different result. So in the top 100 U.S. News national universities, there are 3 regional public universities, 3 out of 100. In ours, there are 16 out of 100. So you know, there are some similarities, but some pretty big differences. And
there are some big differences. You know, I hope people understand this, and that's why I'm so glad to be doing this show. Because what you're measuring, in my humble opinion, okay, is far more important than what the other guys are measuring. You're measuring what really matters. It's more important
in the sense that it is of more value to more people. If you are upper middle class and you've got a brainiac kid and you want to get them into one of the top 50 or 20 or 10 schools, U.S. News serves you fine. That's a perfectly good, you know, use of that ranking. But you know, if you're a normal person with a normal income and a normal student, you know, that isn't going to be as helpful to you. And I think ours is going to be helpful to you. And if you're a taxpayer and you want to know which schools are doing right by the country, U.S. News is of almost no use to you. And we're really the only ranking that will help you there. So literally, you can go to our website. You can go to our website and look up your alma mater. If you went to college, look up your school, and you'll see whether they're producing, you know, returns for your tax dollars that you want.
Wow, it's just amazing. And by the way, I have to tell everyone, I'm just going to read down a list of this. I think this is the best. These are the categories of the Washington Monthly College Guide. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. 4-year colleges. That's broken down to national universities, liberal arts colleges, colleges you go to for your master's universities, and the bachelor's degree colleges, and I'm sure doctoral degree colleges. Then you get to my favorite category, which is best bang for the buck colleges. And you break that down in region. And to me, that is the key thing. We want people, if they want to be college ready, we want them to get their money's worth out of school. And if they need heavy-duty graduate work, that might be somewhere else. But by that time, they're on their way. Okay? You have to be able to make the choice at the beginning. I can't tell you how many of my friends drive their kids all over the country to 47 schools. They finally pick up one school, and a year later, they transferred out because their girlfriend transferred out. Okay? I mean, you know, everybody knows the story. Okay? So here's another one. America's best and worst colleges for women in STEM. This is the category. America's best and worst colleges for master's degrees. I mean, this is just great stuff, I got to tell you. And how'd you come up with these categories? Talk to me. This is great.
Well, you know,
I love it.
Look for areas that others haven't done work in. There's really never been a good ranking of colleges that that are good for women in STEM. Women are doing very well in college, overrepresented compared to men, undergraduates. When it comes to science, technology.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know what just happened. Are you talking into your phone, Paul?
Yeah, I sure am. Is this better?
It seems to be better. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me repeat.
Yes, please.
No one's ever ranked. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yes.
I can. Yes. Are we hearing each other, Paul?
Good. So no outlet has ever ranked well. They've tried to, but not well. Which colleges help women succeed in STEM? And that's science, technology, engineering, and math. We know that women are overrepresented as undergrads, but radically underrepresented in STEM majors. And so we got some fresh data from the federal government that no one had really used for this purpose. And we said, which programs at which colleges have the highest percentage of women in them that graduating? And it turns out back in the day, you'll recall the Harvard president and former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers saying,
sure,
defensively, well, women, they don't do well in STEM because they don't have the aptitude for it, right? They don't really like it. They like the humanities. It's the guys, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And this has been kind of the excuse that colleges have had. Well, what we found is that the most demanding colleges in STEM in the country, places like Carnegie Mellon and MIT, have the highest percentages of women in STEM.
There you go. There you go.
So now, how can it be that the toughest STEM programs are producing the highest percentage of women graduates?
How could that possibly be?
Yeah. So and you can say, well, these are just, they're just trying to be woke and they're trying to hike up their numbers, but the women aren't qualified. We got numbers on what these young people, men and women, are earning 10 years after they graduate. The women are earning just as much. So if it's a conspiracy, the corporations are in on it. But what I think it shows you is there's really no excuse for not recruiting and graduating women in STEM. And so we did some reporting to find out what these programs are doing that the other programs aren't. And it's what you'd expect, right? You have to recruit better. You have to take away the kind of testosterone-laden, abusive male cultures that are in some of these programs that have been 90% male forever. It's like a frat house, right? Women don't like that. They're not going to be comfortable in that. You take that away. You hire a few more women professors and recruit, right, with some sense of urgency, and you can do fine. And why is that important? Because we have first of all, it's not fair not to have women have these opportunities. But you think about it as the national interest, which is how we look at things at the Monthly. We have a huge we have way more jobs for engineers and technologists than we can fill in this country.
That's right.
And you can, if you can get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands more women through these programs, we're going to have faster, better economic growth, more innovation, and so forth. Plus, this will really help with the gender gap in pay. These jobs pay very well, so it's in our interest to get more women into these programs and through them. And now you can look at which colleges are doing better and why.
Yeah, to me, and again, this is also important. It creates a diverse America, and it takes advantage of America. I always say this here on the show, and we're always talking to a lot of educators and all that. When kids drop out of school, or when there's an under-resourced school somewhere, that just doesn't hurt that neighborhood. That doesn't hurt that kid. It hurts everybody. The potential we miss and have missed over the course of 100 years, 200 years is ridiculous. Okay? It's ridiculous.
It's true, and everybody doesn't have to go to college.
No.
But today, to get anywhere near the middle class, everybody has to have some,
higher education,
high school education, and it could be a certificate, it could be a associate's degree from a community college, it could be a 4-year degree, a master's, but you need something. And it
can be a technical degree, an electrician. I don't care. You have to go afterwards and learn more and round yourself out, all that sort of thing. Okay?
Yeah,
and that's what makes all the difference in the world.
There's some people that can make it without that, but they're fewer and fewer. And if you just look at the jobs that are being created, overwhelmingly, they're for people with college degrees. So, we should be doing more for those who don't have college, but we also should be doing more to help people get in and through college.
Yes, we should. And actually, you did a good article on that. I'm going to just mention I think it's the latest issue. The president of Northern Arizona University. Is that I think it's the latest issue, isn't it? Am I right?
Absolutely. So there's another regional public university, Northern Arizona University. Yeah. Your listeners have probably never heard of it. It's in Flagstaff, Arizona. is a perfectly good institution, but it was moving in the way a lot of institutions move, which is how can we climb higher on the U.S. News rankings? And so they were sort of, we're going to be a R1 research institution, and we're going to, we're just going to try to be like the more hoity-toity colleges. The new president comes in, is a great guy by the name of Jose Luis Cruz Rivera.
Right.
He'd come from the SUNY State University of New York. He was very high administrator in that, and former engineering professor, and really had a vision. He came in and he did something no college president I've ever heard of did. The way you get ahead as a college president is you make your college more exclusive. You increase you try to get more people to apply and say no to more people, right? You become more selective. No president I've ever heard of made his college less selective. And that's what Jose Luis Cruz Rivera did. He said, the conditions we put on getting into this university is leaving out a whole lot of Arizonans. We're going to lower our standards for admission, not lowering our standards for teaching.
Thank you.
Our standards for admission.
Thank you. Yeah.
And he lobbied the state to provide more money for young people. He's opened it up to a lot of Native Americans who. That's a heavily Native American part of the state, and
right, and it's huge
radically
to do that.
Few are going to the college. He started partnering with the community college. He did all the things that the opposite of what you'd want for you. Instead of making his college more nationally famous, he made it more locally helpful, and just like the college you went to for undergrad, and leaning into what those colleges can and ought to be doing best, and we just think he's the best.
And it's true. Did you know a professor named in higher ed named Brian Rosenberg? Does that name ring a bell for you?
Say it again.
Brian Rosenberg.
No, but probably I should have.
You should. That's exactly right. Brian was the former president of McAllister College in Minnesota.
Yes.
And now he teaches.
Yes.
Now he teaches at Harvard as I think not adjunct faculty, but visiting faculty. Okay, and he wrote a book. You'll love this. That's why I'm telling you this. I've had him on the show, so I'll say it again here. He wrote a book called "Whatever It Is, I'm Against It," and it's all about higher education today. Yeah. And I think I'm just from this course of the way this conversation, but I think you will really enjoy talking to him. Okay,
he just sounds like an important person we should know about.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy, and the book is dead on as far as I'm concerned. But it's the same type of thing. There's problems out there in higher ed. Obviously, we saw that this past year. There's terrible problems, and one of the problems, and you guys highlighted this, which I was so impressed with. Okay, one of the problems we have in higher ed, as far as I'm concerned, is that most professors don't know how to teach. Okay, it's absolutely true. That really struck me. Okay, we're asking people who have never been taught to teach people to be able to do really amazing things. Now we have a pretty good country and all that, but we got to get something together. Talk about that article, please, Paul. I thought it was great.
So, if you go back more than 100 years to William James, the great Harvard father of American psychology, he said that it's widely understood that that no college teacher is ever taught to teach or is very good at it.
Ridiculous.
Teaching is an art form. Teaching is a craft. There are and as over the years we've learned through research more and more how students absorb information, the best way to teach them so that they retain the information. And you know what the worst way is? Standing up and lecturing in front of a chalkboard. And 90% of teachers do it the wrong way. And there have been efforts to reform this going back 100 years, and they've never worked. And they've never worked because in the higher education, you don't get ahead by being a good teacher because we don't measure good teaching. And what we do measure is research, right? Do you produce research? So there's really not an internal incentive for any professor to get better at the thing that we think is his full-time job. Now, there's some that do it out of the love of the craft, and
of course,
they're fantastic teachers. We all had them, but they're the exception, not the rule.
Exactly.
And this is a story by a college professor, Jonathan Zimmerman of the University of Pennsylvania, who, by the way, informs the reader that the most elite schools have the poorest teaching. And it's the regional public universities, like, again, the one where you went to,
exactly,
that have the better teaching, right? Because the regional public university professors aren't spending all their time trying to publish, papers.
Or be in their labs.
Yeah.
Which are important. It's an interesting fact. Most of the colleges have a school of education. Not all, but most of them do. Have a school of education. You would think a prerequisite of becoming a professor at any given college would have to run through a training via the school of education that knows how to teach pedagogy.
Yeah.
Okay, people learn. You would think that would be just part and parcel. Before you can come into one of our classrooms, Jim, Dr. James, okay, you have to take 5 courses in our education school. Of course, we'll pay for it, etc., but that's part of what we're doing. Okay, so you can become a better teacher.
That is not what happens.
No,
that is not what happens. You get 3 days of training at a lot of these colleges.
That should work.
It's kind of insane. And that's our higher education. And by the way, if we have teachers who are professors who can teach better, the people that it's going to help the most are the lower income people, the first generation.
Of course.
They're the ones who would benefit the most. They probably didn't go to very challenging high schools. They're probably struggling a little bit more in college, and to have more robust and helpful lectures and teaching would be a huge boon to that group.
It sure would. And this is just so important. A friend of mine named Amy Gamble was a professor at a community college outside Detroit, and she wrote a book called Help, My College Students Can't Read. Okay? So you're asking professors who know their subject, I won't argue that, teach people at a college level, because a community college level, which is higher education, and one I respect greatly, okay, to teach kids who need remedial help. They can't do it. They don't even know where to turn. They don't know any. And this is why I love your rankings. I want to get back to what we're talking about here in Washington Monthly, because you take things like this into consideration. Okay, in the same
issue of the magazine, Larry, there's a story by Ann Kim about remedial education. It turns out we know a lot about how to make remedial education work better, and the reforms have spread. The problem with remedial education is you stick students who need that kind of training into remedial courses, and they never leave. They never advance, or they don't never, but they often don't. It's called the Bermuda Triangle of higher education.
I saw that article. I haven't read it yet. I saw that article.
Because these classes, you're paying for classes that feel a whole lot like high school or junior high, right? And you're not getting credit for them, and you're eating up time. And what most students do if they have to take a bunch of remedial courses is they just drop out.
Yeah.
And that's it. Now, those are kids, young people who can succeed, right?
Of course they can succeed.
They came ill-prepared. So what the best colleges, the best community colleges have done is, instead of putting kids in remedial education, they put them in something called co-requisite courses. You're in English 101, but then you get an extra dollop of training to go through your assignments and help you with your essays, and those students do much, much better. And yet that reform has spread somewhat, but not everywhere.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why, this is dark but true, remedial education courses are cash cows for universities. You stick 30 students in a classroom with an adjunct teacher, and you do, workbook assignments.
Wow.
Very little cost, a lot of revenue from the tuition.
It's brutal out there, I got to tell you. Talk to me about how you guys are covering, I'll ask it this way, but you can talk about it even broader, higher education, or I'll say just education, as a matter of fact, just education and the upcoming election. What's your take on that, Paul?
Well, one of the things we do, as I mentioned earlier, is we rank colleges based on whether their students are registered and casting ballots. We have ways of measuring that, or we can measure the processes. And we've created kind of an incentive structure so that colleges can decide, hey, it's in my interest to make it easier to vote, because these students, they're on campus maybe, and they want to vote by mail, but they don't know how to register, how to access the voting rolls. There's not a precinct of voting place near the campus. So colleges can put a little effort out, and they can really raise the rates at which their students cast ballots. And look, if you are a Democrat, you want students to vote because they vote overwhelmingly for Democrats. There's been a ton of money poured into programs to activate the college vote. And I think, keep your eye on Wisconsin. All the polls say it's neck and neck. But what's really changed in Wisconsin is the areas around the University of Wisconsin, at Madison-Dane County. They've got the students voting at high levels. They've got a lot of people with college degrees who have settled there. This is going to be a big factor in the election. We don't know how it's going to go, but it'll be a big factor.
Well, everything changes all the time. It's that simple. What do you think of what's going to happen to higher education? Okay, and I'm going to ask it both ways. If Vice President Harris wins or former President Trump wins, okay, what do you see for colleges and universities?
So if Trump wins, a lot of it depends on where Congress is. But if
that's true,
and it's really kind of hard to know. Donald Trump has said very little about this. You can go back and look at his record and what he cared about, and even there, it's not very clear. But probably more of an emphasis on vocational, non-traditional college education. His administration was very protective of for-profit colleges. Efforts by the Biden administration to clean that world up, they reversed. But Republicans on Capitol Hill have been that way, but they seem to be moving more in the direction of wanting to clean up the for-profit world. But they think that the Democrats are too soft on the non-profit college world, and so there's going to be a debate about that. I think if Kamala Harris becomes president, and here's a prediction you've not heard anyone make, because I don't think anyone's made it.
Here we go. Go ahead.
Joe Biden's wife, Jill, teaches at community colleges.
That's right.
And so it is not coincidental that during the Obama-Biden and then Biden-Harris years, community colleges got a lot more attention. You got more money, more bills to spend money, more studies, more White House visits. It was, community colleges for the first time became a national priority. A lot more needs to be done. They didn't get as much done as they wanted, but they certainly elevated community colleges. Kamala Harris didn't go to community college, but she and her husband and Tim Walz and Tim Walz's wife all went to regional public universities.
Right.
There's not one Ivy League educated person in the entire ticket, husband and wife, spouse and including the spouses, on the Democratic side. It's the first time that's happened in decades. On the Republican side, you have two Ivy League educated people at the top of the ticket. Donald Trump, graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, and
he was
J.D. Vance, a graduate of Yale. And so I think that if Kamala Harris wins, you're going to see a lot more attention to regional public universities.
Right. I hope you are correct. I hope you are correct. And by the way, I hope she wins. I'll say that quite simply. You don't have to say that. I will say it. Okay? Paul,
yes,
this has been wonderful.
Yeah. Hey,
Larry,
thank you for having me. This is
you kidding
really
me? It's great. And keep up the good work. Your magazine it's again, everybody, it's Washington Monthly. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you, which I didn't understand on your website. There was a part that asked for subscriptions. Okay,
yes.
For the Washington Monthly, but I think you can read the whole magazine for free. Okay, talk to me about how you work with subscriptions. So everybody knows.
If you want a print copy of the magazine, you can subscribe. I think it's $19.95. We have 5 print issues a year. But you can also, get you can read it online. We don't put up a paywall. And you can also go to our website and get our thrice weekly newsletter, Tastic. It's free. It's the smartest political analysis, I think, on the web. We've got unbelievably good political analysts, everybody from Margaret Carlson and Chris Matthews to our political editor, Bill Scher. And you can, start getting Washington Monthly content delivered to your email 3 times a week. And if we are a nonprofit, we survive in part on donations from our readers. So for $50, for a $50 donation, you can do that right online at WashingtonMonthly.com. You'll get a free subscription to the print magazine.
Great. Do I get a tote bag too? Please don't send me a tote bag.
You don't get a tote bag.
Thank you.
We don't do
I
tote
appreciate
bags.
that. Okay, we have enough tote bags.
All the extra money we have, we're not going to come after you with a lot of emails and phone calls. That's you'll get an email thanking you, and they're tax deductible donations, but we don't do tote bags.
Yeah, it's a great magazine. I'm going to follow up with all this. I'll tell you, it's really good stuff. Thank you, Paul. This was just great. I really appreciate it. Not only the time, but all the work you guys do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Okay. Bye, Paul. Thank you. Okay. Paul Glastris, WashingtonMonthly.com. Heartily recommend it. That's all I can tell you. We'll archive at ace-ed.org. Share it with your friends. I'm Larry Jacobs. Thanks for listening.